It's time for an inside look at what's cooking on the San Diego Padres hot stove as the team gets ready for the 2025 season.
Swing and a miss. Padres win.
Sam Levitt breaks down the Padres offseason moves and provides an in-depth look at everything you need to know before the Padres take the field for spring training.
Swinging a high fly ball. Deep left center. This one way back and gone.
Plus the latest headlines from around Major League Baseball and analysis of what's happening around the big leagues.
Breaking news out of baseball.
Welcome to Inside San Diego Baseball with the Padres Radio Network's pre- and post-game host, Sam Levitt.
And we're coming to you live from inside our San Diego studios on a Wednesday night here in America's finest city. A new edition, live edition of Inside San Diego Baseball, taking you up until 9 p.m. on this Wednesday evening as we continue to talk all things Padres baseball, Major League Baseball, as we head towards the end of 2024. Hard to believe this will be our final Wednesday evening program of the year. We'll be back with you, I think it would be January 8th at 7 p.m. So enjoy the next couple of hours with me, yours truly, Sam Levitt, on this Wednesday night. Frank Marchese will chime in just a little bit. He'll be along producing tonight, and certainly you'll hear from him from time to time in the next 2 hours. A lot of good stuff coming up on this Wednesday evening, the week after the winter meetings. You may have listened to our show on Tuesday of last week from Dallas, Texas. We had a good time. We had a ton of content from the winter meetings. Really a great event, and I'll take you a little bit behind the curtain of the event in a second, really give you an idea of what it's like there day to day. But I thought from a Padres perspective, really a lot of good stuff to chew on. Really, there was some momentum on a couple of different fronts, whether you want to talk Roki Sasaki, whether you want to talk the rumors surrounding the Padres' appetite to trade somebody like a Dylan Cease. It really seemed like on the Padres front, things were picking up. But let's be honest about it. Since the moment I got off the air on Tuesday, from the moment I got on the plane back to San Diego on Wednesday night, from the winter meetings, there has not been anything really to discuss Padres-wise. Not many rumors, not many articles, not many tweets, not many TV segments. It has been almost, since the winter meetings, eerily quiet, I would say, on the Padres front. Again, considering for the few days of the winter meetings, you heard some different things, especially on the Cease trade front. Now, the starting pitching market hasn't exactly done anything else since the time we left the winter meetings. Corbin Burns is still unsigned. It looked like when we left the meetings he would get signed pretty quickly. That has not happened. So we talked about that throughout the meetings and on Tuesday night, that the rest of the starting pitching market would probably dictate what ultimately happens with Dylan Cease and the timing of it as well, and how Roki Sasaki fits into that as well. So I'm going to be honest with you. The next couple of hours, it's not like we've got a ton to chew on as far as new Padres rumors. I think we're in about the same spot that we were when I left the winter meetings a little over a week ago. We'll take your phone calls, though, as we always do on my shows, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. And I have a question for you that I want you to call in and answer. But a quick recap of the winter meetings before we get to all of that. Really a great event. I had a great time, got there Sunday night. It started with the Soto news breaking, obviously the biggest story of this offseason. And we'll talk a little bit more about this in the second hour. I actually think the Yankees have done a really, really nice job since Soto signed with the Mets. Look, the Mets got a great player. I think you could make the argument the Yankees may ultimately be better off and are constructing a better overall team than they had last year without Juan Soto. We'll see what the final product looks like. But between Fried and the trade for Devin Williams and now the trade for Cody Bellinger, I think they're in a very, very good spot, the Yankees are. So we'll talk more about that in the 8 p.m. hour. But really a good time. I mean, had an opportunity to interview a bunch of guys, talk with a bunch of guys, Heyman, Morosi, Nightingale. A number of other national reporters that I've got to know the last couple of years. And I'll tell you this, the winter meetings are great because it's the one event, really that and the All-Star game, where the entire sport of baseball is in one place. That and the All-Star game are the two events. Now, I think some would argue the World Series as well is a little like that, but I don't think they are nearly on a national level, especially when you talk about other teams involved, or I should say teams that are not involved in the World Series. It's not the same thing. Yeah, you've got a lot of media, got a lot of broadcasters, national broadcasters at the World Series, but the winter meetings, and this is a little bit different from the All-Star game too, and maybe about why I'd put it as the number one sort of national get-together event in Major League Baseball. At the winter meetings, it's every manager, it's every GM, it's every front office, it's every some contingency of baseball operations, minor league personnel, video personnel. It's every local reporter, it's every national reporter, broadcasters. Now, on the broadcast side, I tend to be one of the only people there from like a true broadcast sense, and that's just the nature of my job here in San Diego and in the work I do for the station. But it is the one event baseball world comes together, and you get an opportunity to see everybody and, quite frankly, hang out with everybody and talk and catch up and, trade information, trade stories, just have a good time. So it was a really, really nice event, and happy that the station gave me the opportunity to go to the event. So let's get into a little bit of Padres stuff here in the opening segment. I'll welcome in Frank in a moment as well. The question that I want to ask, as we seemingly are at a standstill as far as Padres news, Padres rumors, Padres activity here on December 18th of the trade deadline, of the offseason, is, are you worried about the Padres? And I asked that question because I was looking at it before I came on. And I feel like there's been a lot of worry out there about the inactivity, lack of rumors, and some of that is very rightfully so, right? You want this team to get better. You don't want this team to have holes and needs and head into spring training with question marks at multiple positions, 2 spots in a rotation, catcher, left field. We know the needs the Padres have. But the reason I ask you if you're worried is because I think there is a case when you look at what this team is right now, and this is going to sound very, very homerish, what I'm about to say. And I'm not breaking any news here, but I think when you really, really look at it, man, they're in a very good spot as far as the talent, and I think especially on the pitching side, where you could make an argument that this team is currently constructed with just a couple of pieces to fill the gaps, should be right in the mix for a postseason spot. I want to go through the pitchers in particular, because I think it's really, when you go down the list of pitchers that have a chance to be on this opening day roster and provide depth in the system at AAA that can come up at a moment's notice, it's pretty impressive. I'm going to go down a list of 16 pitchers right now on the 40-man roster. And again, this is not me saying that the Padres don't need Roki Sasaki. This is not me saying that they don't need a 4th and 5th starter. Those are needs. And if the Padres don't make that happen, hey, 4th and 5th starter spot, that's going to be a big question going into the year. Left field, catcher, all those spots. So don't get it confused. I'm not saying the Padres should sit on their hands. You've heard my shows the last few weeks. I've never said that. I don't think that. But as there's a total lack of activity right now, the point of this list and the point of this conversation is, where are they as far as guys that you know are going to be in San Diego Padres uniforms come February, whatever it's going to be, the day when pitchers and catchers report. List of 16 pitchers. Here we go. Darvish, Cease, King. No argument by anybody. That's your top 3 starters. Matt Waldron. Let's not forget, Matt Waldron had a very, very, very effective few months as a major league starting pitcher. I thought last year, even though he ran into a wall, he showed you that he has a real chance to be a back end of the rotation arm. Again, not an ace, but a back end of the rotation arm. List continues. Randy Vasquez, there were flashes. Again, I'm not saying ideal scenario. You want Randy Vasquez in the back end of your rotation. But if he's there, there is an upside to Randy Vasquez. List goes on. We're going to get into long relievers and just setup guys now. Okay? Suarez, Adam, Estrada, Reynolds, Jacob, Matsui, Burrito, Morahone, Hoeing, Kolick, Peralta. Now, are all those guys that are going to knock your socks off that you're super, super excited about? No. I mean, are you getting super pumped up about Stephen Kolick, about Johnny Burrito? Do we really know what a Sean Reynolds and an Alec Jacob are, despite some of the success they've had in the major leagues? We don't. But the point of that pitchers list of 16 guys, again, the full list here: Darvish, Cease, King, Waldron, Vasquez, Suarez, Adam, Estrada, Matsui, Reynolds, Jacob, Burrito, Morahone, Hoeing, Kolick, Peralta. That's 16 guys. And if you're telling me that 5 of those guys, Darvish, Cease, King, Waldron, and Vasquez, let's say that's your starting rotation. If the Padres did nothing else and didn't get Roki Sasaki, that's your starting rotation. Again, I'm not saying that you're not worried about Waldron and Vasquez. That's not what I'm saying at all. But there's some upside there. There are a lot of very quality names in that 16 to make up a 13-man pitching staff, right? Relievers you have a lot of confidence in. Suarez, Adam, Estrada. I'll put Sean Reynolds in that mix based on what he showed. I'd probably put Alec Jacob in that mix based on what he's shown. Morahone, Hoeing. Then you got Peralta, Kolick, Burrito, Matsui. My confidence wavers a little bit. But that's a solid 12 to 13. And especially in the bullpen, where could you make the argument that this team could at least be right in the mix for a postseason spot, hold the postseason spot at the trade deadline, and then operate from there and pick up what you need? Again, I'm not saying you don't want Roki Sasaki. I'm not saying that they're perfect in that pitching staff. But when I really sat down and looked at the 40-man roster, I think I felt better about it than I've really talked about the last handful of weeks. Now, the part of this where I think the needs are really, really glaring is the other 13, and that's on the position player side, because it's hard to get to even just a 13-man position player roster that's anywhere close to complete based on your 40-man right now. And I'm not even including the Oscar Gonzalez's and some of these guys they've signed to minor league deals, okay? I'm just looking at the 40-man right now, okay? Machado, Bogarts, Cronenworth, that's 3. Arise, that's 4. Tatis, Merrill, that's 6. Campusano, that's 7. Right now, you know who the other catcher on the 40-man is? Brett Sullivan. He's number 8. And after that, it gets a little tricky, because then you got Tyler Wade, who I would assume is going to be on this major league roster based on the contract he received. And then after that, the names I have on the 40-man here: Tirso Ornelas, Eggy Rosario, Brandon Lockridge. And I don't know if those guys are going to be on your opening day roster. They could. I don't know if it's a great sign if they are. So the position player side, I feel like, is where the needs, the lack of depth, the moment where you go, man, that's kind of a rough scenario once you get off kind of a very top-heavy for 7 or 8 names, that's where it gets tricky. And that's where the needs are really glaring. Because the names I just listed, Machado, Bogarts, Cronenworth, Arise, Campusano, Sullivan, Tatis, Merrill, Ornelas, Rosario, Wade, and Lockridge, that's 12. I can't even get to 13 yet. Okay, with the names on that list, I can't get to the 13 position players, which is not uncommon that I'm just looking at the 40-man roster and can't do it. But it magnifies the fact that while I think on the pitching side, you could make the argument that is currently constructed, they'd be able to get by from a complete 13-man position player group. It's really hard to make that argument on the position player side, even though you've got stars, you've got Manny, you've got Merrill, you've got Tatis, you've got Arise, you've got Bogarts. I mean, you know what you're getting from a lot of these guys. But there's a lot of work to be done. So that's where they stand right now with this lack of activity. And you may be out there listening and call me crazy, right? Like say, hey, Sam, be real. They've got needs. They've got to make moves. And you're right, they do. But I think after kind of looking at the 40-man for the first time in a while and actually writing out a 26-man roster, the takeaway I came away with was on the pitching side, if they did nothing, I think they would actually be in a pretty, I'm not saying a great spot, but a pretty okay spot where you could argue they could get by with it for a while. And there's some depth there as well. On the position player side, you look at left field, catcher, you need a first baseman, DH type, and then your bench. I mean, you know, I don't, again, with this current 40-man, you're telling me Tirso or Ornelas would be the starting left fielder, essentially, or Eggy Rosario is going to become an outfielder. So that is where there's a lot of concern. But I'll tell you what, and I'll bring Frank in here in a second. When I list off those 16 on the pitching side, I actually feel pretty good about it. When you list off that full list of 16, some of the depth they have. You know, yes, getting a Roki would be massive. Yes, getting another starting pitcher would be massive. But you take Cease out of that equation, you insert another starting pitcher or two, there's going to be some addition and subtraction. It's a good group, but it's obviously far from a finished product. And I suppose that's my long way of saying it is December 18th, and we have no idea what this roster would really, really look like in a couple of months, 3 months on opening day. Frank Marchese, welcome into the program.
Thank you very much, and thank you to Scraby for taking over the first couple of minutes for me. Yeah, I agree. It's not a White Sox roster as it sits right now. There are holes. There are definitely holes, and important holes, that need to be fixed. However, it keeps the feeling continues to be around here, and I hear it on this station all the time. I hear it from you guys in the chat. I see it on Twitter. We keep waiting on the monkey to do the trick with the banana. Problem is, the monkey doesn't have the banana right now. He doesn't have the money to spend. He doesn't have the cap space that he needs in order to pull off a big move. And he doesn't have the prospect capital that he needs to pull off a big move. So we keep sitting here waiting for this big move to come in and
hey, that's why I'm reading the roster.
No, I know.
I mean, you read my mind, because I'm sitting here on December 18th, and I'm with you. We're all waiting for the shoe to drop.
Because we've been conditioned for it. He does it every year.
And it very well may. There may be a flurry of activity. And let's be honest, if I'm putting money on it, my money would be on there's going to be activity rather than none.
I think
it's way more likely they make a trade moving Cease than they don't. They make a trade moving somebody than they don't, that they make moves.
I think that he made too many moves last year to make a really impactful move like bringing Cease in this offseason.
Well, it's going to be correct, but it's going to be a different kind of move. You're talking about moving a Cease and somehow getting stuff back that could help you.
No, I agree, and I'm
rather
100
than trading prospects.
Yeah,
for a
I'm
season.
110% with you on that. I'm just saying that I don't think that the big move that everyone's waiting for, like bringing a player the caliber of Cease in, it's not going to happen because he did too much last year that he doesn't have enough. He doesn't have the banana anymore.
Agree. No, I agree. I agree with you. That kind of trade's not going to happen for this team.
No, and I think that's what everyone's waiting for.
I don't think they are. I think
we've been conditioned with Preller for.
But I think the fans out there understand that is not going to be the kind of trade they make because they can't make it. And
I don't know.
And by the way, they can't take on. Well, I'm not going to say they 100% can't take on the payroll, but it appears they wouldn't take on the payroll.
No.
So,
and that's another reason why trading a Xander Bogaerts doesn't make sense. Is because what the Yankees just did to bring Bellinger in, the Cubs are paying for Cody Bellinger to not play for them. Do you really want to pay Xander Bogaerts that much money to not play for you? Because you're going to have to eat a lot of that contract if you want to move a guy like him.
You 100% going to have to eat a lot of it. The point is, and then we'll go to break here. The point is, and there are people out there driving around listening that are saying, Sammy, be real. Okay, they have tons of needs, and you're right.
They also can't.
They do.
They also can't see that you're
on my list,
the roster
around
on the camera.
Pad here. My point is, and the exercise here was to look at it and say, how would I actually feel about the names on this list if there were no additions and if there were no additions to it? And I think my takeaway on the pitching side, I'm actually. Not that saying that it's perfect, but I actually think it's a pretty deep group. On the position player side, you know exactly what you're getting in some spots, and I think there are glaring holes in others that pretty desperately need to be addressed.
I know we're going to break now, and we have a short segment here because we have MadFriars coming up.
Yes.
I want to, the comment that just came in the chat from Big Dan, I want to discuss that in the next segment because I think that's I think that's really good, and I think for a short discussion, I think that would be exactly what we need for the next segment.
Okay, we'll talk about what Big Dan had to say. We'll get to your phone calls, 833-288-0973. In about 10 to 15 minutes, Ben Davey, MadFriars.com, will join us to talk about their new top 30 Padres prospects. And we're going to ask him, we'll get the Salas and DeVries and those guys, but I want to know about like a Tirso or an Ellis. Let's say the Padres don't add anybody. Who is Tirso or an Ellis? Can he be a big league outfielder? I don't know. Does Ben Davey know? And in the 8 p.m. hour at around 8:35, we're joined by Mark DeRosa of MLB Network. Good conversation about Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, Mike Schilt, Mark DeRosa. MLB Network in the 8 p.m. hour. It's Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night up until 9 p.m. You're listening to 97.3 The Fan. 7:26 on 97.3 The Fan on this Wednesday night. It is Inside San Diego Baseball, taking you up until 9 p.m. as we discuss all things Padres MLB. We'll be joined by Ben Davey of MadFriars.com. They do a nice job covering the Padres minor league system, have for a long time. Ben Davey coming up at 7:35, so in just about 10 minutes, a little under 10 minutes. And Mark DeRosa, MLB Network, will join us around 8:35 as well. We'll get to your phone calls coming up in a little bit. 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. The phone number to call if you want to talk Padres or what have you, Major League Baseball-wise, as we have our final Inside San Diego Baseball show of 2024. We'll be off next week. That'll be Christmas Day next Wednesday, and then we will be back with you on the 8th of January. Wednesday, January 8th, we will be back with you for a few more shows, and then we got to figure out what we're doing for spring training, all of that. I'll be in Peoria on day one and throughout, but got to talk to the powers that be, Mr. Adam Klug, about how we're going to handle our Wednesday night program from Peoria to be determined. All right, Frank, I know you wanted to read a comment here from the YouTube chat, so the floor is yours. Go ahead.
Yep, it's on the screen right now. This is from Big Dan on Twitter. I'm significantly worried. I feel that this season was the closest to the Padres having a World Series contender since '98. They didn't need blockbuster moves to make the current team better. I feel as though Texas killed the winter meetings. If the Padres would have had the same moves that Texas did, it would have improved the team without breaking the bank. But the lack of activity makes me think ownership can't afford to manage at the Seidler level. What is supposed to be a progression fee? I don't know if he ran out of characters.
I'm not
on that
sure. Well, there's a couple of points in here that when he says, I feel like Texas killed the winter meetings. Is he talking about
how the
Rangers?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, the signings that the Rangers made fit the team. High quality players, not a lot of money, didn't break the bank.
Who the Rangers saw other than
they got
Eovaldi?
They got Nathan Eovaldi.
Okay, who they had.
Let me take a look here. I got to go through this here. Hold on.
I can't think of anybody aside. Well, Higgy.
Yeah, Higashioka.
Higgy, Eovaldi. Is there anybody else?
Those were two.
Very significant. I agree. But Eovaldi they already had.
Tucker Barnhart, minor league deal. That's a veteran catcher that can get some service out of him if they need him. Looking through. Nathan Eovaldi.
But look, if Big Dan is saying
Adrian Hauser to a minor league deal.
Yeah, look, if Big Dan is saying that the Padres don't need blockbuster moves to make this current team better.
No, he was saying that last year.
He
was saying that they didn't need moves like Tanner Scott. They didn't need moves like Jason Adam in order to make it an over-the-top team. Which I think is fair. I think that's a fair statement to make.
It's an interesting thought. If they had never acquired, let's say, Adam and Scott, it's hard to assess because I think we came away from the season feeling like they were better than where they eventually ended, or should have been better.
I also think that to your point, if you didn't get Scott and Adam, you have no one to rely on when Suarez started to fall off a little bit towards the end.
Yeah, look, I'll tell you, even though it ended where it did, I think the Adam and Scott trade clearly made them a much, much better bullpen and team. I don't think there's any doubt to that.
He's not arguing that, but what he's saying, I think, is you didn't need, those weren't imperative moves to make, which I think is fair.
I don't know that I agree with that.
I I kind of do, and I said it at the time, especially with who they
You
gave
don't think
up.
that the Adam and Scott trade made that bullpen
Oh,
significantly better?
It definitely did.
So you
That's
think
not
they
what-
would have also just lost in the NLDS?
I'm not saying that.
Would they have
either.
made the postseason without those guys?
I think they would have.
Okay.
I think they would have made the postseason. With
What
how
about the
far
Cease trade and the Arise trade?
those you needed at the time because you didn't have a DH after Manny started to move back to third, and Cease you needed another starter. So yeah, those you needed. I think that, and this is what I was talking about with Scraby during the first segment of the show. Is you're looking at an ownership that's doing things different now.
We know
with
that.
Seidler
I mean,
gone.
look, it's not breaking news on that. We've been over the payroll stuff.
No, you're right.
Ad nauseum. I'll tell you what, I disagree, especially with. Look, the Cease and Arise trades were made a lot earlier, and I think in both
Crucial.
cases they had
those
a need.
were
Yes.
crucial.
I'll disagree with you on the Scott and Adam trades. I think those were really key, and I actually think you're discounting how good those two guys were from late July on.
They were
How important they were to the run they went on to make the postseason.
I'm not saying that they weren't important. I'm not saying that they weren't great, because they were. They were absolutely fantastic. And again, who are you relying on if you don't have them and Suarez starts to fumble in September?
Correct.
My point, and I think his point was as well, they weren't crucial. It's not like we were at a bullpen deficit.
I disagree. I think they were crucial. When you looked at that bullpen was very, very shaky and up and down for a long stretch.
Could have gotten away with one of them at least.
No.
Not both.
Maybe. But I think those two guys were pretty crucial. I think setting up that trio of Adam, Scott, Suarez, even though it ended where it did, and I think that bullpen was plenty good enough to go win a World Series, I think it was very, very crucial even in the final 2 months of the season to where they got.
And
I don't know if you get there without that trio.
Where
the state of that bullpen was at the time of the trades.
I told you at the time, I hate trading as many prospects as he did.
Okay.
And now you're sitting at the price of doing business.
But here's the reality. They made the moves.
Yes.
They couldn't get to the promised land. And now they're in this situation where seemingly there's not money to spend, and they might try to pare down the payroll from where it is right now as far as commitments. We've been over that a ton. And they may have to get, as we've talked a ton about, we talked about it a ton last Tuesday, incredibly creative to get to where they want to go from a full roster standpoint because of these constraints, whether it be financial, whether it be the prospect capital, which they traded away. There's no way around that.
All gone.
So that's present day, and that is why when we come back, Ben Davey of MadFriars.com will join us. I'm going to ask him a little bit about Salas and DeVries, but I really want to know about the other guys in this Mad Friars top 30. I want to know about Ornelas. I want to know about Ryan Berger. I want to know about Henry Baez. Who are some of these guys that we could see at some point in 2025 that if the Padres were to not do a whole lot the rest of this offseason, all of a sudden, some of these guys, you might be very familiar with their names very quickly. More after this on 97.3 The Fan. 7:39 on this Wednesday night here on 97.3 The Fan. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios as we continue tonight's edition of Inside San Diego Baseball, our final Inside San Diego Baseball program of 2024, talking all things Padres, Major League headlines. We'll get to more of those Major League headlines after the top of the hour. And as we always like to do here on the offseason program with yours truly, we like to take a look at Padres prospects, the minor leagues, and from our conversation in the last segment, we're maybe getting to a point with this system where there are names in here that you may not know a ton about that may be very, very relevant very, very soon. So we welcome in Ben Davey of MadFriars.com. They have done a great job. Ben and his colleagues at MadFriars have done a great job covering the Padres minor league system for a long time. I've been reading their work all the way since 2019 when I was sitting at the AA affiliate of the Padres at that time in Amarillo, Texas. So they do a really, really nice job. They just put out their top 30 top 30 Padres prospects in the system, and Ben Davey joins us to discuss the top 30 and some of these names that we're focused on here tonight and moving forward. Ben, appreciate you chiming in and calling in. How are you?
Of course. I'm doing great, Sam, and might I say happy belated birthday.
Oh, thank you, Ben. I appreciate that very, very much. All right, Ben, so I kind of previewed it in the last segment. I'll let you touch on Salas and DeVries here a little bit in this general question about the system, but then I want to redirect to some more unfamiliar names maybe in the system, or at least names that maybe fans just don't know a ton about, aside from maybe knowing their name, knowing there's somebody in the system. Your thoughts as you guys put together this top 30, the state of the Padres system, all the way from the top end of prospect like a Salas, DeVries to everybody else. Your thoughts on where they are at this current moment here in late December of 2024.
I think the system would look a lot better with a certain Japanese pitcher in there at the top. But I think what Preller did is he traded a lot of those mid to upper tier, that 5 to 15 group of prospects. And so right now we have a lot of really good prospects, the Salas and DeVries, top 100 guys. And then there's a pretty steep drop off before we get to the rest of the depth of the system. And so our number 5 prospect, last year was the minor league pitcher of the year in Robbie Snelling. And This year, our number 5 prospect has yet to throw a pitch in minor league ball. So there's a little bit of a difference that we're seeing after all the trades from last year.
Right. And look, we just talked about it in the last segment. We've talked about it a ton over the course of the last handful of months. Yes, I think it was no secret to anybody at the time that they were emptying out a ton of their minor league depth with all those trades of Cease, the Arise deal, the Adam deal, the Scott deal, and now here we are. So, again, I'm going to stray away from the usual questions about Salas and DeVries and redirect a little bit to some other guys in your top 30. And I want to start, actually, as we go down the list, and I've got to scroll down to find what number he is again, and in fact, he's number 16, and that's Tirso Ornelas. And the reason, Ben, I ask you about Tirso is, number one, he's been in the organization a really, really long time. Last year, it seemed like he was on the cusp of getting a promotion to the major leagues. And look, when you look at the 40-man right now, you look at the outfield depth, it would appear to me, and again, we're a long way from knowing what this entire 40-man roster looks like on opening day, but it would appear to me at the current moment like Tirso may have a real chance to win some kind of job at the major league level at a spring training. Your thoughts on Tirso Ornelas, who I think is a name that a lot of people know?
Yeah, Tirso is probably going to be one of the few names that people know because he's been in the organization since he was 16. And so even though he's still just 24 now, that's 8 years in the Padres organization that he's been there. I think the only reason why we didn't see him last year, and he's a big, strong, he has a ton of power. And the Padres have worked for years to get that power to go from batting practice in the game. And what we saw last year is that power finally started to turn up. He hit a career best 23 home runs last year. His strikeout rate is the lowest it's ever been. He had over an 850 OPS. He did everything right. I think the only reason why we saw the Bryce Johnsons of the world instead of him is just that he is a corner outfielder, and he was essentially playing David Peralta's position.
Right.
And we needed that backup center fielder, which Tirso was not. So even though the offensive profile is a lot better, we needed that center fielder in case, knock on wood, nothing ever happens to Merrill. This year, we don't have Peralta. We don't have Profar. We don't have a lot of people. So, yeah, as of right now, he's probably our leading, candidate for left field.
Right. And obviously, we're a long way away from the start of spring training. I'm sure there will be other names, if not the name in left field ahead of Tirso. But look, again, Ben, that's why I'm asking you about him, because right now you're looking at it, and Tirso would be one of the leading candidates for a job. So I think it's important that we get to know Tirso a little bit better. Let's talk about the catching position, because you look at this 40-man again. You look at catcher, you see two names right now. Camposano and Sullivan, those are names that Padres fans know really well. Then you have Ethan Salas, who is currently 18. I'm going to take him out of the conversation for a second and ask you about Brandon Valenzuela, who you have ranked in the 20s as far as this top 30 Padres prospect rankings, much like Tirso. He's been in the organization for a few years. He was at AA and AAA last year. Played over 100 games, had 380-plus at-bats between the two levels, and I guess hypothetically at some point in 2025 could get a look based on, number one, who else is on the roster, and number two, what the catching situation ends up being over the course of the full season. Your thoughts on Brandon Valenzuela, where he's at right now as far as a prospect?
I think if we're looking for a purely defensive catcher, Valenzuela could fit the mold. He is, whenever we talk to the pitchers in, whatever league he's in, the pitchers always rave about he calls a good game. He's able to throw runners out on the bases. He, gets balls that are in the dirt. He's a really solid defender. And so if we're just looking for that defensive profile, then he could be there. One of the things that we've noticed offensively is that he would start off in a level struggle, and then by the end of the year he'd start to come to his own. And the next year he'd repeat that level, do great, he'd get promoted and struggle. And so we see it almost every year. He'd get a mid-season promotion and then struggle at the new level. And the next year he would start off, he'd do fine at that new level, then get promoted and struggle. And so we're seeing this offensive kind of, is he going to be a solid offensive catcher where he might hit 250 and put up 700 OPS, or is he going to be Austin Hedges? And I think, if we're okay with him just being a solid defender who might hit 200, then I think he'd be, a fine backup catcher. But I wouldn't go and anoint him the next starting catcher for 100 games in San Diego just yet.
Again, we're joined by Ben Davey, MadFriars.com, going through some of the different Padres prospects here. Guys, you may not know a ton about as we go through the Mad Friars top 30 prospects. Ben, let's move on to some pitching. And in my opening segment tonight, I was just looking at the 40-man as far as pitching, right? As we go through this period of inactivity for the Padres as far as moves. And I actually came away from looking at the 40-man actually pretty happy with the depth the Padres have on their 40-man pitching-wise. Not that it's perfect, not that Roki Sasaki wouldn't be a huge help, but there are a lot of names in here that you feel good about. But as we know, throughout the course of a season, you typically need a lot of arms to contribute and come up. And one guy that you have ranked very, very highly on your list, and he's only behind Salas, DeVries, and Cash Mayfield, who was the team's first-round pick last year, and obviously is really, really young, is a right-hander by the name of Henry Baez, who was the team's 2024 minor league pitcher of the year, had a sub-3 ERA between Fort Wayne and San Antonio last year, had a really good 2023. You write that his fastball sits in the mid-90s, has a good two-seam, a slider, can throw all those three pitches for strikes. assessment of Henry Baez if he is somebody that could get a look at some point in 2025?
I think Baez undoubtedly will get a look. You'll see him get a start here and there in spring training when you're in Peoria. He has the ability. He doesn't have the offense or the pitching upside of some of the others like Cash Mayfield or like others on this list, but he is a solid back end of the rotation starter, right? He throws in that mid 90s. He's got a bunch of pitches that he can locate and spot for strikes. But none of it is like that swing and a miss, get the sword, jaw dropping, like look at the movement, pitching ninja type of thing. And so he's got a lot of those pitches, but it's more of like that number 4 or 5 starter, which if we have a rotation with Cease and King and Darvish and everything, like just someone who can eat innings and pitch, fairly to a 4 ERA in the majors as a rookie, that is exactly what Henry Baez can do. He's not going to be the next, Roki Sasaki, but he does profile as someone who could definitely help out the club in 2025.
There are a couple of other guys here, Ben, that stand out as far as guys who could potentially start at some point if needed next season or certainly in the future. Another one of the guys is left-hander Omar Cruz. Really good numbers last year, sub-4 ERA back in a starting role between AA and AAA. What can you tell me about this left-hander Omar Cruz, who I've seen a lot of video on and I've seen rumblings about that a lot of people think this guy's pretty good?
Well, Cruz is he was traded for Joe Musgrove, and the Padres got him back last year in the minor league side of the Rule 5 draft, which is always great to see that there is that other portion of the Rule 5 draft that we actually got someone from. What we found out is that Cruz has that sweet spot of the one time through the rotation. His stuff is great seeing it the first time, and then the second time he pays a pretty steep penalty where hitters are making an adjustment and they're able to track what he's throwing. But the first time through, he had unbelievable numbers. I think he struck out 113 and 110 innings this past year. He struck out 118 and 86 innings this past year. That was 2 years ago when he was last with the Padres. But a lot of the stuff he does, he has a really low batting average on balls in play. He works really well from the left-hand side, but he's going to be that person that could eat up 2-3 innings. I wouldn't trust him to go 5 or 6, but he's someone that can come in that long relief role, lock it down, and be someone that we're looking at like Brian Hoeing was this past year. Where we're seeing him pitch one time through the order and having really good results.
Ben Davey, MadFriars.com, joining us here on 97.3 The Fan. Ben, let's talk about one other starting pitcher, and that is right-hander Ryan Bergert, who last spring training I put in the same grouping as like Adam Mazier, Austin Crowe, but Snelling was maybe a touch behind him, but was certainly somebody on my radar last year as a guy who you could see in not too long at the major league level. Now, you write the first sentence under Ryan Bergert in your rankings is, quote, "I will undoubtedly be lowest on Bergert this year." Tell me why.
I think a lot of the people who are really high on him still is because he has 4 quality pitches that he can throw for strikes. He can throw in the mid-90s. He's got a decent slider. He's got some deception in his delivery. So there's a lot of things that, from just looking at the peripherals, you can see and say, wow, this could be a major league starting pitcher, someone that can profile in the back of the starting rotation. The reason why I'm down is just because when we saw him go up to the new level and this entire year, while his fit was fine, was a lot better than his ERA, he wasn't generating the same swing and miss that he was generating in 2023. And so it looked like the hitters were making an adjustment to him, and he wasn't quite making those same adjustments on the other end. Now, is that something he can't overcome? Like, yes, he is a very smart person, and, hopefully he can. And if he can jump right back up to man. And so you would have to assume that they see something in him that they really like if they're going to add him to the 40-man and not some other people like Brandon Valenzuela. But, it comes with that risk of can he make those adjustments? Because in 2024, he wasn't able to.
Ben, I've got a minute here. Let's finish with Ethan Salas, because obviously it was a very up and down year at Fort Wayne. He's incredibly, incredibly young, obviously. People are still super, super high on Ethan Salas. Your thoughts on what his season was in 2024?
I thought it was a learning experience. You have someone like Ethan Salas who is, hailed as the next Buster Posey, as the next, insert name of fantastic Ivan Rodriguez, William Contreras, Adley Rutschman, whatever you want to name, he was hailed as that. And then in his first year, they talk about how he got up to Double A and, praising him for everything he does. And he's working with Yu Darvish. And I think having that learning experience where he's in high A, it's 30 degrees outside in Fort Wayne, and, he took his lumps. And he even said in multiple interviews at the end of the season that he learned a lot. He had to change his swing adjustments because he realized that what he was doing wasn't working. And he did, and he had a lot better results in both the AFL as well as the last month of the year in Fort Wayne. And it's going to be something where, as much as we'd like to see him in San Diego in 2025, it takes catchers a while because they have to learn, they have to work with the staff, they have to get both the pitcher and hitting mechanics down. They have a lot of stuff to do. So with Salas, I think he will be as good as any of those catchers that I already mentioned, but it's just going to take him a minute. We'll see him maybe mid to late 2026. And by then he'll be back to where he is. But I have every faith in that Salas will be just as good as we thought when we signed him, with the biggest bonus 2 years ago.
All right, Ben. Very, very good stuff. Good job here. Appreciate you joining us. Again, Ben Davey, MadFriars.com. You can check out the great work from Ben and the others at MadFriars at MadFriars.com. I have followed their work for a very, very long time. Ben, have a great rest of your evening, a great rest of your 2024 holiday season. Happy New Year, and I'm sure we'll catch up at some point in the new year. Thanks so much.
Of course. Thanks, Sam. Go Padres.
All right. That is Ben Davey, MadFriars.com. See, I told you, Ben's got a lot of good info on a lot of these guys. You talk about the Tirso Ornelas of the world, Henry Baez, Ryan Bergert, Omar Cruz. Just names you may not know a whole lot about, but just like you may have not known the name Adam Major, let's say, this time last year, well, hey, all of a sudden, Mr. Major was up in the major leagues for a handful of starts. So these are names you got to know. When we come back in the 8 p.m. hour, we have to discuss a key question. Is baseball broken? We'll assess when we return. Hour number 2 of Inside San Diego Baseball coming up next on 97.3 The Fan.
It's time for an inside look at what's cooking on the San Diego Padres hot stove as the team gets ready for the 2025 season.
Swing and a miss. Padres win.
Sam Levitt breaks down the Padres offseason moves and provides an in-depth look at everything you need to know before the Padres take the field for spring training.
Swinging a high fly ball. Deep left center. This one way back and gone.
Plus the latest headlines from around Major League Baseball and analysis of what's happening around the big leagues.
Breaking news out of baseball.
Welcome to Inside San Diego Baseball with the Padres Radio Network's pre- and post-game host, Sam Levitt.
Hour number 2 of Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night. Sam Levitt with you inside our San Diego studios. Frank Marchese on the other side of the glass producing tonight. You'll hear from Frank from time to time on the program. My final hour on the air here on 97.3 The Fan. No, not ever.
Wow.
But for 2024. How about that?
Wow.
My final hour on the air.
You didn't get that text from Adam just now, did you?
Oh, then I'm on tomorrow night, 2 more hours.
Well, 2 if you want. I mean, I'm kidding. There was no text.
I will be. I'll say this. The only reason I think I could be a little wrong, I'm not asking to go on the holiday Christmas extravaganza, the Ben and Woods
Are you going to be here
program at 6 a.m. on Friday. I will be here just
You're
in
gonna be
attendance
on
because, well, no, honestly, they've got a lot going on. I don't need to be on it at all.
They'll pull you up.
But I could pop on for a second, hypothetically, on Friday. I'll be in the building. That's a great event they put on, and I've been here the last couple of years. I haven't missed one since I've been here in San Diego, so I will be here on Friday morning, 6 to 10, in the sound space for the Christmas holiday extravaganza on Ben and Woods. A lot of good stuff coming up here in the final hour of our Wednesday night program. Mark DeRosa of MLB Network will join us at 8:35. Good conversation about Manny Machado, about Mike Schultz, about Jackson Merrill, and to always enjoy catching up with the super, super talented and informative Mark DeRosa of MLB Central on MLB Network. So we'll hear from Mark coming up a little bit later. Phone number to call, 833-288-0973, 833-288-0973. And I promise I will pay off the tease from the bottom of the hour in just a little bit, as we will discuss why baseball is broken. Not totally broken, but continues to operate, I think, in a really odd way that just doesn't make a lot of sense. And at some point, I think the sport's going to have to adjust in a really, really big way. I don't know how they're going to do it, but I think it's pretty clear they're going to have to do it. We'll talk more about that coming up a little bit later. Let's go to the phones, 833-288-0973. We begin things tonight. It's our guy Gonzo in Ocean Beach. Gonzo, you're on 97.3 The Fan, my friend. How are you?
Oh, Sammy, my boy, it's been so long, brother.
Yes, sir, it has. It has. Good to hear from you.
Good to hear from you, too. Frank Dog, you look great.
Thank you very much.
Levitators, you guys are awesome.
Shout out to the Levitators, yes.
Always. So you were asking earlier if we're worried. I really don't know what we really are worried about. We haven't really won anything. But, it's only halfway through the winter break. A.J. Preller has been the trend as of lately. Been a little sneaky on the late trade. And I think this team's just a little special. I don't think anything that really happens is going to bring them down too much, as long as they have that drive and just hit some balls. But
well, Gonzo, yes. See, this is why I like you, Gonzo. You make it sound very simple. You boil it down very simply.
Yeah, I mean, you got to stay positive, and we're never going to change. You got to love our boys.
Well, look, yeah, Gonzo, appreciate the phone call as always. Thanks for listening and waiting on hold for so long. Look, this team was a very together and vibey group, if you will, in 2024. Will they be able to capture that same magic of 2025? We're going to see. We're going to find out. It is typically hard to capture the same magic season to season. It just is. Is this team going to be the comeback kids they were a year ago? I don't know. They could be. They could have that same culture. They could have that same vibe. They could have that same comeback ability, what we loved about them all year, but it's going to be a different group one way or the other, and every year is different, and the 26-man roster is going to be different. We don't know what the bench looks like. We don't know if there's going to be the Peralta and the Solanos of the world. We don't know that there's going to be a Jerkson Profar to shine and outplay any expectation you could have had. We don't know those things yet. My point in the opening segment, and I think it was probably an opening segment that I think made sense, but I think probably annoyed a lot of people as well. But the point of the opening segment was to make the case that even though things are not active right now, even though there's not much to talk about, there aren't major rumblings, and you can almost guarantee the Padres aren't going to do anything super, super major as far as adding a big time player. In fact, it appears far more likely it would be a trade of somebody away to maybe give you more depth, fill some needs, like we've talked about the rumors surrounding Dylan Cease. The point is that from a pitching standpoint in particular, maybe things are not as dire as I think some of us have led on the last few weeks, or at least have made it sound the last few weeks. On the position player side, on the offensive side, you've got your stars, and there's a lot that needs to be figured out. That's where we kind of left it. But we're a long way away. It is December 18th. And need I remind you, at this time last year, Jerkson Profar wasn't a Padre, Donovan Solano wasn't a Padre, David Peralta wasn't a Padre, Dylan Cease wasn't a Padre, Luis Ariz wasn't a Padre. We got a long way to go. Let's go to John.
Hold on
Frank, go ahead.
Before we get to John, I just saw in the chat, you cut Gonzo off before he could wish you a happy birthday.
Oh, sorry, Gonzo. Thank you very much, Gonzo. I appreciate it. Let's go to John, Chula Vista. John, you're on 97.3 The Fan. Go ahead.
Yeah. How you doing, Sammy?
Hey, what's up?
How you doing, bud? Yeah, and then I'll go and wish you a happy birthday. Good, another year above ground is a good year.
Hey, hear that?
You kind of just answered right there. You just answered the Cease thing, but you didn't mention that the Orioles were looking at him, and then I don't know, they were looking at him to actually, that was a big contender to grab Cease.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
It would appear so now, and you bring up a good topic, John, and appreciate the phone call. You bring up a good topic because, look, we said last week, and I think it's still true right now, that the Orioles, from a Cease trade standpoint, match up really, really nicely. Deep system. They're a team that needs starting pitching. They're a team that I don't think is looking to spend a ton of money. And let's be honest, Cease arbitration, $13, $14 million for 1 year. You're not breaking the bank. And they've got the system to do it. I think they match up really well for Dylan Cease. Really, really well. They did just sign Tomoyuki Sugano from Japan to a 1 year, $13 million deal. That was a couple of days ago. He is not as as high profile as Roki Sasaki is, but he's a solid, or supposed to be, a solid pitcher coming from Japan, middle of the rotation type of guy. And they signed Sugano to a 1 year deal. Now, if I'm an Orioles fan, should signing Sugano have any bearing on your ability to get more pitching, whether it be via signing more pitching or trading for more pitching, more elite starting pitching? It should absolutely not. If I'm Mike Elias and I'm Sig Migdal of the Orioles front office, there's no excuse there of, hey, we signed Sugano on a $13 million deal for a year. This is a team that reportedly has the green light to spend money from their new owner, David Rubenstein. And Mike Elias doesn't really want to spend it because that's not how they operate. That's not how he operates. Remember, he's an Astros guy. They don't like giving out those long-term contracts to pitchers. They don't like giving out long-term contracts in general. We just saw the Astros trade Kyle Tucker. So they don't want to give him a deal. Not because Kyle Tucker's not a great player. If I'm an Astros fan, I'm losing my mind. Kyle Tucker, one of the best outfielders in baseball, homegrown. Orioles operate a little bit like that as well. They don't like these long-term deals, even if they have money to spend. My point is, to me, Sugano does not take them out. It shouldn't take them out of any conversation for Dylan Cease. If it does, that's ridiculous from the Orioles' standpoint. I don't think it will. And we'll see. We got a long way to go. It's December 18th. If Cease is going to be traded, it could happen in spring. So we're a long way to go. To me, the Orioles still match up really well. Let's get one more call in. Jeff, Point Loma. Jeff, you're on 97.3 The Fan. Go ahead.
Hey, Sammy. Happy birthday. How are you?
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. And Merry Christmas to you and Frank and everybody else.
Thank you. Thank you. You too.
Like you said, long way to go. Early December. Well, late December now, I guess, or mid-December. I think AJ is waiting for everything to, settle out before he makes a decision. Just like he did last year when we went into spring training going, whoa, was Jackson Merrill going to be good or not or whatever? And the pitching is solid right now, at least semi. But he's got to address a couple of things, especially on the plate and especially in the outfield.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
You guys have a good New Year.
Yep.
And Sammy, love hearing you. Thank God. And I called last time and said I'm not going to hear you again until February, and it was going to be sad. Great to hear you on Wednesday.
All right, Jeff. Appreciate that very much. And we'll be back in the new year on January 8th, Wednesday, January 8th. That is the first, it's not the first Wednesday of the new year. The first Wednesday is New Year's Day.
I think it's either the 8th or the 9th.
We should probably know this. Hold on. Before we address what Jeff had to say, 2025.
I think it's the 9th because New Year's Day is... No, you're right. It is the 8th because New Year's Eve, my birthday is on the...
This is Riveting Radio. Yes. The first is Wednesday, so the 8th. We'll be back on the 8th. No, I'm not going to be here on New Year's Day. For you, San Diego listeners, I'm sorry.
Come on, man.
In fact,
lazy.
I think the whole station from a local standpoint is off until the 6th. So I'll be back on the 8th. Anyway, we'll be back a few weeks. But to Jeff and Point Loma's point, I didn't mean to do it like that. Jeff and Point Loma's point. Again, it goes back to the original conversation we had, the opening segment here tonight. Not sitting there telling you that the Padres are a finished product, that this is the finished 26-man roster when on my position player list here. And again, some of these guys are going to be on the team, but I've got all of Campusano, Sullivan, Ornelas, Rosario, Wade, and Lockridge out of the 12 guys I can list. I'm not telling you that's what it's going to be. It's not going to be that. I'm pretty confident in saying that. We've got a long way to go, but yeah, there's needs. And it brings us back to what we've said for weeks now. And what I said at spring training, at the winter meetings last week. Said it on our shows. I said it here on Inside San Diego Baseball. Yeah, in order to get this stuff done with where they're at reportedly financially, with where they're at as far as a lack of prospect capital to deal to make the kinds of trades they made last year, yeah, he's going to have to get really creative to figure out the 13 players offensively on the opening day roster. Now, again, where I pull a positive by doing that exercise is I actually think on the pitching side, there's a lot of names you like here. Through the 16 I named, again, it's not a finished product. I'm not saying it's ideal to have Matt Waldron and Randy Vasquez as the two guys in the back end of your rotation. But I actually think you could get by for a while with the names on that list. To Jeff's point, catcher, left field, if you're trying to sell me, and who knows, maybe Tirso Ornelas is going to win a job at a spring training and he's going to be Rookie of the Year. I don't know. But that's a hard sell at this point. It's a hard sell to tell me that Oscar Gonzalez, who's on a minor league deal, or somebody signed to a minor league deal, or a Tirso Ornelas is going to be your answer in left field on opening day. You know, in fairness, I don't know that a lot of us thought Jerkson Profar was going to be your answer in left field on opening day when he showed up in spring training. We got a long way to go, but yeah, AJ's going to have to get creative and hit on a lot. It comes back to what we've said for weeks now, Frank.
Yeah, but as you were talking about there with Waldron and Vasquez, as far as, you can get by with those guys. You already have. You did last year with Musgrove.
Absolutely.
The several times Musgrove was on the IL. Then you had Darvish leave for his family issue. Waldron and Vasquez spent a lot more time than anyone would have probably wanted or expected, and the Padres were fine.
I think
not great, but fine.
I think if you were to tell me that Matt Waldron was this team's 5th starter on opening day, and take your pick of what the other guy is that Sasaki? Is that just another professional starting pitcher? I don't know who that is at the moment. But if you were to tell me that Waldron was your 5th, yeah, I roll with that. And
fine.
Look, do I know that Matt Waldron's going to ever have a stretch like he did last year over the course of 2-3 months? I don't know. He's a wild card. He's a wild card because it's not a huge sample size, and he's a wild card because he throws this knuckleball that he's still figuring out. I'll tell you, though, I have reason to believe because of his development with that pitch, some of the success we saw him have for an extended stretch with that pitch, you could sell me that he could be your 5th starter all year and you'd be all right. Look, he ran into a wall, but before that, he was great. He was great. So you could sell me on that, but you could also very easily tell me, hey, you got to go get a 4th and 5th starter, and Matt Waldron needs to be in El Paso to start the year, and I'm sure he'll get his chances, and maybe injuries happen, whatever. He's up here for an extended amount of time and is a big part of the team. We'll see. But you could sell me on Waldron. Yeah, absolutely.
It's having that knuckleball. It's not necessarily just a wild card. It's for him. It's a great equalizer. It's his other stuff may not be good, and no other pitcher in baseball has something as wild and wacky as the knuckleball to fall back on.
I'm not saying it's ideal. I'm not saying like that's the having Matt in the rotation is your A+ plan, but it's not, to me, him being in the back end of your rotation is really not in the world. Of the names on this list, there are a bunch of guys as far as my confidence in them that I put below Matt Waldron. I mean, Again, he had a stretch there where he was very reliable. I mean, where would they have been without him for a while?
You want me to get in way over my head right now by saying something absolutely obnoxious?
Go ahead.
What was it, 12 years ago that a knuckleballer won the Cy Young Award and won 20 games?
R.A. Dickey.
Yep.
It's a leap, but yes. Hey, you never know.
I told you, prepare for it. It's going to go way out there.
We'll step aside. When we come back, we will discuss the baseball brokenness. I know I teased it at the bottom of the hour. We will discuss it because it's important when we come back at 8:35, just after 8:35 in all likelihood. Mark DeRosa, MLB Network, will join us as well as we continue on Inside San Diego Baseball on this Wednesday night. You're listening to San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. 8:22 here on 97.3 The Fan on this Wednesday night inside San Diego baseball as we take you up until 9 p.m. 2024, we're winding down. We're winding down our final offseason program of the year here on Inside San Diego Baseball. Again, if you ever miss any portion of the show every Wednesday night, 7 to 9 during the baseball offseason, you can go back and listen to all of it on the Inside San Diego Baseball podcast with Sam Levitt. Find it on the Odyssey app or wherever you find your podcast. And, of course, we always invite you to tune in on YouTube as well, 97.3 The Fan YouTube channel. We are live there right now as well. You can see me, my San Diego Mojo cap, and you can see the very, very good-looking Frank Marchese as well. We are live on camera on YouTube right now. We always are. Everything we do here on 97.3 The Fan is live on YouTube, on Twitch, on Twitter, on Facebook. So we invite you to go follow, subscribe, watch the 97.3 The Fan YouTube channel. Mark DeRosa, MLB Network, will join us in about 12 to 15 minutes, around 8:35, 8:40, right after the next commercial. So stay tuned for that. Good chat with Mark DeRosa of MLB Network. Does a great job for MLB Network. We talk Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill. We talk about Mike Schilt. We talk about MLB Central. Great show that Mark is on with Lauren Shahadi and Robert Flores. So a lot of good stuff coming up with Mark DeRosa. We teased this in the last hour, and then teased it again at the top of the hour before I got to the phone call. So I'm the master of the long radio tease, if you will. But Major League Baseball came out this week with a study identifying factors for the rise in pitching injuries. And others have talked about it here on the station last couple of days. It was, bantered about on Twitter, social media last couple of days. It's not like Major League Baseball with this study really broke any kind of news you didn't already know. It sort of confirmed what I think we all know and surmised, and that is that there is a clear and direct correlation between injuries to Major League pitchers and the chase for higher velocity and better quote-unquote stuff while exerting max effort more often. Pitchers, whether it be at the amateur level, whether it be at the college level, whether it be at the major league level, they are throwing harder than ever. They are also getting injured a lot. They are getting injured in the early part of spring training to opening day more than they're getting injured the rest of the year at a higher rate. So it was an interesting study. You can read all about it, ESPN.com. Jesse Rogers did a nice job summing up the study that Major League Baseball put out. I'll read a little bit of what Jesse had to write here. The study identified problems occurring both at the pro level and amateur level after interviewing over 200 people within the industry, including former pro pitchers, orthopedic surgeons, athletic trainers, club officials, biomechanists, player agents, amateur baseball stakeholders, and other experts in pitcher development. The study made broad recommendations, including potential rule changes to address the increase in pitching injuries. There are a lot of good charts in here. Again, I talked about the IL placements from spring training through opening day. It's an interesting chart when you compare it from day 2 through the end of the World Series, just to look at the rate of pitchers getting injured, how much more prevalent it is at the very start of the activity. It's really, again, it's not anything that will shock you, but this chase for velocity, the chase for better stuff, the invention of this new sweeper, it is a problem that we've known about for a while. You remember the book The Arm that Jeff Passan wrote back when they were trying to figure it out over a decade ago. And to me, Frank, we're at this same spot where we understand there's a clear problem, even down to the amateur level, of chasing velocity directly leading to more injuries. But teams, whether it be amateur, college, pro, we prioritize velocity. It's rewarded, even though we know that it's hurting these players in a pretty significant way. And when we talk about the brokenness of baseball a little bit, that's what we were talking about a little bit earlier. How baseball, in a way, in that sense, has a big problem that I don't totally know without a major shift in either philosophy or rules to discourage velocity, I suppose, to make pitchers go deeper, learn how to pitch without this increase in velocity that we've seen the last decade or two. It's a problem that continues to be kind of unbelievably significant, where we still don't really have an answer for how to handle it, I think, going all the way down to the amateur level.
I'm more surprised, honestly. Like, I'm not surprised that it has to do with velocity. I'm more surprised that it doesn't have to do with the desire to find more spin rate, honestly, putting more torque on the arm that way.
So let me read something here from you. This is from the ESPN article. The league is concerned with pitchers potentially overworking themselves during the offseason in attempts to optimize stuff, a term referencing the composite movement characteristics of pitches, including horizontal and vertical break and spin rate. Sweepers were cited as a relatively new pitch contributing to this issue. Weighted ball training was also identified as needing more study, as there are mixed opinions on its contribution to injuries. More than anything, though, the study concluded that chasing velocity is the number one contributing factor for pitching injuries. It appears it's a mix of both. That it's velocity one, but the chase for stuff is part of it as well, this composite movement on pitches.
I honestly think that the only way you can change this is a fundamental change with how pitching is taught, which is teach people to pitch, mix pitches, tunneling, anti-tunneling, eye level, speed changes, instead of just blow it past him, strike him out. I think if that changes and pitchers and kids learn how to pitch and get the hitter more often than not sitting on a 100-mile-an-hour fastball, and instead constantly have them guessing to the point where, hell, I don't know what this guy's throwing next.
Yeah.
If you do that, then I think you can start to change that, because then you're not necessarily relying on 100+ mile an hour stuff. Then you're relying on speed change, velocity, a little bit of velocity change. Like those days where low 90 fastballs and low 70 curveballs and changeups, those are gone now, because pitchers are throwing almost mid to high 80 changeups and curveballs now. That's a big thing that is gone from the game now that could affect the way that they're pitching now. And if you get back to that, it could help fix the problem.
So you brought up just now getting back to that, right? And that would go hand in hand, in all likelihood, with starting pitchers going more regularly deep into games. So paired up with this...
I think that would be a side effect of it. I don't think that needs to happen in order for...
But one way you could encourage less velocity would actually be encouraging starting pitchers to go deeper, to not max out, right? To not pitch with max effort so regularly. Along with this study that came out this week, there was an article by Evan Drellick in The Athletic. This came out on Monday. Let me read a little bit of it here. Major League Baseball misses the days when starting pitchers would regularly pitch deep into games, but the league isn't going to use an innings requirement of 5 or 6 innings or any other number to get back there. It's a quote from Rob Manfred, commissioner.
I don't think they should either.
Just too blunt an instrument to fix this problem. You have to go 6 innings. I think it has to be a series of rules that create incentive for the clubs to develop pitchers of a certain type. Let me read a little bit more here a little bit later in the article. This is from Drellick. 2 concerns have lingered around starting pitching. The first is the most serious injury prevention. A little bit later. The second is an aesthetic concern, a belief that heavyweight pitching matchups drive attention to the game and that baseball is more enjoyable when those pitchers stay on the mound longer on any given night. This is me talking again. Now, I totally agree with the second part of that.
Yes.
I don't know about you. I love good starting pitching.
Yeah.
I love marquee pitching matchups and two starting pitchers going deep in a low-scoring game. Now, you and I, in modern-day baseball fandom, may be in the minority on that. I don't know that we are. I think there are people that would tell you they want more offense. I think there are people that would tell you that most people don't like to sit around and watch zeros go up. I love it. I love great starting pitching. To me,
It's nice and quick.
that. But there is nothing better than watching a starting pitcher go deep into the 7th inning, the 8th inning, have to find an extra gear, get out of a big-time jam, leave to a standing ovation. To me, it is one of the more beautiful, impressive, entertaining aspects of baseball. Not everybody's going to agree with that, but I would love if one way or another we could figure out a way to get more of that. I'm not a fan of these bullpens being used the way they are. It's the way they use them right now. It's become a totally different game from a pitching standpoint. But if there was a way to encourage pitchers to go deeper, and if that meant throwing with less velocity, if there was a way to encourage organizations to develop pitchers that could go deeper, that weren't max effort all the time, I raise my hand. I'm on board. I'd rather see pitchers go into the 7th inning more regularly than everybody throws 99 miles an hour.
No, absolutely. 100% in agreement with you there. The two most memorable moments I have at Petco Park, one was last year, and you saw it because being with the station, I have the very fortunate ability to be able to go to as many games as I go to every year. Watching Garrett Crochet pitch last year. Do you remember my reaction when they took him out because he had an innings limit?
Yeah.
It was like, oh man, I was really enjoying watching him pitch. This is ridiculous. Yeah. And the second one was watching Odrizame Despaigne almost throw a no-hitter against the Mets. He came out, and just in that moment you described, it's the 8th inning, 1 or 2 outs. The Mets just broke the no-hitter. I'm sitting behind the Padre dugout. I gave Despaigne a tip of the cap, and I swear to you, he was looking dead at me and gave me one back. Those are my two most memorable moments at Petco Park, both revolving around pitchers, especially Despaigne, because that was such a great game that he pitched. And coming out of that game as late as he did with the game that he had, I would love to be able to see that more often. It's really upsetting that we don't see it anymore much anymore, honestly.
I agree with you. I would love to see it more. I don't quite know how you get there because I think
it's got to be a mindset change.
It's got to be organizational. It's got to be across the sport because I tend to agree with Rob Manfred that I don't think the answer, and baseball purists, even if you love starting pitchers going deep, you wouldn't love this. Imagine putting an innings minimum on starting pitchers or saying something to the effect of, if you have a starting pitcher that doesn't get through, let's say, 6 innings, you'll lose your DH. Okay, that would be kind of like,
that's not good.
That would be kind of the most basic thing that would sort of make sense if you were going to do something like that. But understand that if you implement that kind of rule, what you're doing, you are taking just like we had the conversation about the golden at bat, you are taking a pure tenet of the game and flipping it on its head. You are saying a pitcher has to pitch a certain amount of time. So that would be an incredibly intrusive rule to the pure nature of the game. I tend to agree with you that this is not something that is going to be fixed by a rule.
Yeah. No, this has to be a philosophy change.
A philosophy change. Now, There could be baseball ops people out there, pitching coaches out there. Ruben Niebla could be listening right now for all I know. That say, hey, you know what? Current state of the game, we don't, we know it's more aesthetically pleasing, but it's not the way we do it anymore. We want max velocity. We don't mind using bullpens. We want max effort. We want the best stuff. We want spin rates. And that's the way the game has evolved. From my perspective, baseball is a better game when you have starting pitchers going deeper. And if that means philosophically changing from top to bottom or bottom to top, from the amateur level to the major leagues, how pitching is being taught, the philosophy behind max effort, the philosophy behind premier stuff, the philosophy behind spin rate, to me, that change is well worth it for a reduction in injuries and what I think is ultimately a better version of the game. But man, put it this way, it's a really, really enormous task that almost seems too gargantuan to overcome when you talk about doing the type of overhaul that I think would need to be done in order to get to where we've talked about. So it's a fascinating problem for Major League Baseball. It really is. I don't want to say it's a crisis, and Jeff Passan was the one who used that broken word I saw, baseball's brokenness. But it's a fascinating internal question for our game as to what you do with the injuries, with the velocity, with the aesthetic nature of the game, with marquee pitching matchups. It is, when you talk about the big issues around the game, I think prime above them and maybe the biggest one we have right now.
Sports is a copycat industry. Let's just say the Padres adopt this policy of we value pitching over velocity, and it works.
Mm-hmm.
It wins them a championship. Guess what every other team is going to start to do? They're going to start to do the same thing because they saw it worked. And the reason why I know that would happen is because they did it with velocity. One team started packing on velocity, and then everybody else went to try to get high velo pitchers. It takes one guinea pig to show that it works, and then the copycat nature of this industry is going to get behind it and going to go. Same thing with analytics, same thing with Moneyball. It takes one to do it first, and then everybody else is going to fall in line when they see it works. This is not a rule that you can make.
We shall see. It's a fascinating question. Again, you can go to ESPN.com. They have a good breakdown of that report. Again, it's not gonna really break any news to you. Newsflash, throwing harder means that the arm gets injured more. That's basically the report. I mean, it's not rocket science, but it's a problem that has been there for a long time that we don't have a great solution to. Let's step aside. We're a little bit late for the break. When we come back, Mark DeRosa, MLB Network. Quick interview with Mark about Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, Mike Schilt, plenty of Padres-related stuff, and we'll wrap it up. Final hour here of Inside San Diego Baseball on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan. Inside San Diego Baseball continues on this Wednesday night. We are taking you up until 9 p.m. here on 97.3 The Fan. We'll wrap up the show in just about 6-7 minutes with a final look at headlines from around Major League Baseball over the course of the last few days and some final thoughts here in 2024 as we wrap up our final program of the offseason as we head into 2025. Well, at the winter meetings in Dallas, Texas last week, I had a great opportunity to chat with Mark DeRosa, longtime major leaguer, now on MLB Network, on MLB Central with Lauren Shahadi, Robert Flores. They do a fantastic job. You'll hear me ask Mark a little bit about the show, the success of the show during this interview, but talk about somebody, an analyst that I really respect. If you watch Mark DeRosa, not only does this guy know what he's talking about, he is as good at breaking down video and explaining the game as anybody doing it in baseball right now. I'm a huge fan of Mark DeRosa. Had a chance to talk with him at the winter meetings, and this was my conversation with MLB Network's Mark DeRosa last week in Dallas. Joined right now by Mark DeRosa of MLB Network. And Mark, let's talk about the Padres, where they stand right now, coming off a 93-win season. Disappointing end to the National League Division Series. Obviously, they have needs. They have holes to fill. How do you view where the Padres are right now, considering what they have, but also what they need?
Yeah, I think for me, I put nothing past A.J. Preller. I think he likes to think outside the box. I think he loves acquiring star players. What he's done there, I mean, you can make the argument, and I kind of troll social media in the offseason. A lot of the Dodgers players around a campfire seem to think that that was the series they had to win to advance and win the World Series. So going into the postseason last year, the Pods were certainly the team to beat. Dodgers took a major step forward. They always do with the acquisitions of Blake Snell, and they'll keep it moving. So I'm just kind of interested to see. I think a lot of what the Padres had, I'm interested to see if they bring it back. I mean, the Jerks and Profars of the world were hitting number 3 in that order. I don't know who's going to come in and make that big a splash, but he always likes to think outside the box. So these whispers of like Dylan Cease potentially being on the move, it's kind of interesting to me because that's a move that he would make to kind of do something pretty crazy. So I had a chance to get to meet him in the GM meetings and really sit down and kind of have a conversation with him. And he's created such a buzz at Petco Park. They're so talent laden. So yeah, I don't foresee them not figuring out a way to challenge not only for the NL West, but a massive postseason run.
You alluded to the talent the Padres have. Yeah. One of the real great stories in baseball this year, the emergence of Jackson Merrill, 21-year-old kid, learns how to play center field, has a Rookie of the Year caliber season. What were your impressions of the season Jackson Merrill put together?
Yeah, I think I could go a couple points on that. Number one, the buy-in of the players in spring training with him making the team. There was whispers that Manny's and the Fernando Tatises felt like he was deserving, and that's not always the case with a 20-year-old. His ability to move positions and be so athletic, the clutch gene he showed all year was massive. But I think for me, watching him, the overall, you could just see a confident kid at the beginning. Kind of now the expectation level is like, oh, I can do this at a high level, massive expectations. And to be honest, I chronicle on Central a ton of swings from the side on the skybox. He has got one of the most nastiest swings working right now. I mean, he lets the ball get deep. He's got a nice rhythm off his backside, a lot of pop. So yeah, definitely one of my favorite young players in the game.
Let's talk about another Padres star, and that's Manny Machado. You look at Manny's season in 2024, gets off to a slow start. He's dealing with the elbow after the surgery in the offseason, but you look at the numbers end of the year, near 30 home runs, 100-plus ribbies. To you, what stands out about Manny, the player?
What stands out to me is he wants to post. Whether he feels 100% or he feels 50%, the guy is battling to get out on that field. Whether it's in a DH mode, whether it's at third base, he wants to compete at the highest level, and he wants to show his teammates kind of something to follow. In today's game, it's kind of occasional load management, trying to find ways to get guys off their feet. He's a guy that demands to be in there every day, and I know for Mike Schilt, that's got to be a blessing to have your stars want to go to the post every day.
You mentioned Mike Schilt. How would you assess the job that Mike did in 2024 and got a contract extension too? What stands out about Mike?
A leader of men. Ultimately, the guys are the show, the players are the show, but they want to be led. They want to work hard. They want to get incrementally better at the margins in everything. I know I did. If I came in and I had a manager that I didn't feel was like I got a little butterfly-y when he walked through the clubhouse, then I think we got the wrong guy in there. I think there has to be that look to the manager, especially in the dugout. I always wanted to look to my left or right, depending upon what dugout I was, and stare at the manager and know he had it on lock. That's the biggest thing for me. And Mike Schilt's been through a ton of battles in this game. He's won at the highest level with the Cardinals before he came over, so he doesn't miss anything. That's big.
Dero, I consume a lot of baseball content, and a must-watch for me every morning, in all seriousness, is MLB Central. Yeah. Dero's Deep Dives, the D-List. I record it.
Yeah.
You, Robert, Lauren, you have done such a terrific job for a decade now. What has contributed to the success of your show and the connection that so many people seem to have to it?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of reasons. Number one, great people, right? In front of the camera and behind the camera. We have created a nice little team that I enjoy coming to work with every day. Lauren and Robert are fantastic at what they do. The chemistry we've created is real. We enjoy each other's company away from the camera. I always say what we're like on camera is exactly what we're like off the camera. And I wanted to create a show that I would watch if I were a player. A safe space, have some fun, give some love, give some honest opinions on what we feel about the game, but ultimately empower the player to want to come on and realize that they got like a nice space for them to feel comfortable in the morning. Grab a cup of coffee, laugh a little bit, learn a little bit. But ultimately, like the breakdowns we do, I watch the games. It's what I'd be doing anyway. I love the sport. So I know in today's kind of world of 30-second blasts, I'm still sitting down watching games pillar to post. So if there's something in the third inning that jumps out, that's what I think that's our separator, is our love for the game.
That was Mark DeRosa, MLB Network. Great chat with Mark at the winter meetings last week in Dallas. Sam Levitt back with you inside our San Diego studios. Final few minutes of Inside San Diego Baseball here in 2024. Again, Wednesday, January 8th. We will be back with our first edition of our off-season program. 2 hours a week on Wednesday nights, 7 to 9 p.m. We'll be back. And then I'll tell you what, January 8th, I've got like a month to spring training at around January 8th. So we're getting there. Once we get to the holidays, you can see the schedule start to shrink. I start sort of, in my head, like doing the days and the schedule. I'm like, man, I got to get a lot of stuff done before we head out to Peoria.
That's why I said we've only got like 5 of these shows left.
Look, and I've kind of joked about it.
That's assuming we're not doing any during spring training.
I don't know is the answer. I've got to talk to Adam. I'm not sure what our plan is going to be for Peoria. And I say that not because I don't want to do the show Wednesday nights. I say, and while plenty of content, I'm not worried about that. Plenty to talk about. Much more to talk about than we got right now, let's be honest, Padres-wise. But I do a lot at spring training. I got long days for 40-something days at spring training. We're going to see. I got to talk to Adam about it, but we'll have more info on that for you. Before we go here, obviously, major headlines last few days around Major League Baseball. Most of this pretty old news. Kyle Tucker traded to the Cubs. Cody Bellinger earlier today traded to the New York Yankees. I'll tell you what the story from today, which I found most interesting, just a minute on it here. Nolan Arenado refusing to waive his no-trade clause for a deal with the Houston Astros. The Cardinals are trying to do him a solid, really, by getting him out of St. Louis. They're trying to move him. I don't quite understand. Astros, good organization, team that should be competitive. I guess Nolan didn't want to go to Houston, but I don't know where that landing spot is going to be for Mr. Arenado. So I thought that was interesting. I would think that most players would want to go to the Houston Astros.
I think the days of the Astro dominance are coming to an end because they're losing a lot of the players that have made that possible. Bregman's not coming back most likely. Kyle Tucker's now gone.
Right. Well, and I said it earlier. Yeah, if I'm an Astros fan, number one, the fact that they were so close to getting Arenado sort of signals that they're out on Bregman in all likelihood. Yep. But yeah, that Kyle Tucker trade, it's driving me crazy if I'm an Astros fan. He is an excellent player who you should be trying to lock up long term, and instead you're the Houston Astros with all the success you've had, all the playoff runs you've had. You're trading away a guy like that because you don't want to sign him to a long-term deal. That would drive me nuts if I were an Astro fan.
My uncle's a Cubs fan. He's not all that upset about it.
No, he's a great player. Tucker's out. Look, he is one of the more underrated players in baseball. He is outstanding. So good for the Cubs. Not great news for the Padres. That's a team they're probably going to battle for a wild card spot, postseason spot. So, hey, that's a good pickup by the Chicago Cubs. All right. That's going to just about do it for us on Inside San Diego Baseball, not just for tonight, but for the calendar year. Ben and Woods will be on the air 6 a.m. tomorrow. Final 2 days of local programming here on 97.3 The Fan. Again, we will talk to you on Inside San Diego Baseball on Wednesday, January 8th. We'll be back at 7 p.m. with another 2 hours. Fingers crossed by then. We've got plenty of Padres news and moves and rumors to talk about. Until then, have a wonderful holiday season. Have a very happy new year. I will speak to you in 2025. You've been listening to Inside San Diego Baseball on San Diego's #1 sports station, 97.3 The Fan.